Wide receiver Steve Largent's circus-type catches helped the expansion Seahawks outdraw their Tampa Bay counterparts by 16,000 fans per game. With crafty quarterback Jim Zorn at the helm, the Seahawks were one of the most exciting teams in the league. The Pittsburgh Steelers released running back Preston Pearson on September 15, 1975, and the Dallas Cowboys picked him up 4 days later. That same day, they released Jim Zorn, just 2 days before the start of the regular season. The expansion Seahawks signed him as a free agent on January 8, 1976. Head coach Jack Patera was a player's type of coach who had been the Vikings' defensive line coach from 1969 through 1975. The Purple People Eaters' heyday. In Week 6 against Tampa Bay, both teams were winless, but Seattle won 13-10. Linebacker Mike Curtis blocked a 35-yard field goal attempt with only 40 seconds remaining. The Buccaneers had committed 20 penalties in that game. Even though Patera was a defensive-minded head coach, the Seahawks finished last in the league with an average of 30.6 points per game allowed. Jim Zorn is the player who gave the team a fighting chance each week, even though they finished with a 2-win, 12-loss record. Number 84, Sam McCullum, was selected in the expansion draft from the Vikings. He caught 9 passes in 2 years for Minnesota, but caught 32 in 1976, including the first 2 touchdowns in Seahawks history. Oh yeah, he did lead the league in interceptions with 27, but that'll happen when you also lead the league in pass attempts. 35-year-old Bill Munson didn't start any games, but he played in 5 games during his one-year fling in Seattle. He'd play 3 more years for San Diego and Buffalo. Make no mistake, Jim Zorn was the Seahawks leader. Quite a story from an undrafted player from Cal Poly Pomona. Steve Largent was drafted by the Oilers in the 1976 4th round, but traded to the Seahawks on August 26, 1976, for a 1977 4th round draft pick who was wide receiver Steve Davis out of Georgia, who didn't even end up playing in the NFL. Steve Largent retired after the 1989 season, he was the NFL's all-time leader in catches, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and the most consecutive games with a pass reception. The Seahawks made a great catch by landing Largent, but a big one that they let get away was wide receiver Ahmad Rashad. He played out his option with the Bills and signed with the Seahawks on May 27, 1976. The Seahawks then traded him to the Vikings on September 7, 1976, for a fourth-round draft pick who ended up being wide receiver Larry Severs, who never played in the NFL. Rashad ended up playing in 4 Pro Bowls and twice was the NFC's leading receiver. How good was the Seahawks' rushing attack? It was bad. They rushed for the least amount of yards in the NFL and had a below-league average rush of 3.8 yards. Sherman Smith looked promising, however. He was a second-round draft pick by Seattle and ended with the 5th most rushing touchdowns and 9th most rushing yards in team history. The Seahawks' special teams play were a mixed bag of tricks. Generally speaking, they weren't very special. The Seahawks' 1976 first-round draft choice was 6'5", 270-pound defensive lineman Steve Nyhouse. The team nearly selected Cal running back Chuck Muncie with the second overall selection in the draft. The Seahawks had the 6th fewest sacks in the NFL, 27. They also gave up the most passing touchdowns, also 27. Linebacker Mike Curtis was selected from the Baltimore Colts in the expansion draft. He had some big years in Baltimore, along with a big reputation as a tough guy. While he was the Seahawks defensive captain, it certainly appeared as though his best days were behind him. That's embarrassing. He was age 33, just the age that Redskins head coach George Allen preferred, so he signed him as a free agent when the Seahawks waived him in September 1977. Defensive back Dave Brown from Michigan was the Steelers' 1975 first-round draft pick. Seattle selected him in the expansion draft, and he had a terrific NFL career as he starred with the Seahawks from 1976 through 1986. They weren't any better against the run, as they allowed the most rushing yards in the NFL and had the second worst yards per carry allowed, 4.7.